Sure.
let's talk to the fans for a minute. So that's how this
Yeah.
works. A promoter calls a booking agency and says,
Right.
I want this band. And I'd like them to, I'd like, so, okay. So a promoter calls your booking agency for Exile,
Right.
and they say, hey, we'd like Exile, but we'd also think that them with Little Ruben would be great. How do we make that happen?
Yeah. And that happens all the time. And, in this case, we sort of appeal to the same audience because we were sort of the same time period, basically, back the 80s, 70s, 80s, 90s.
Right.
We have more mature fans, let me put it that way.
But you're generational too. I know you're generational too. Like,
we are.
You've got grandmas, moms and dad and grandkids showing up at shows, right?
Happens all the time. And a lot of times we'll have young kids, back when we were doing meet and greets afterwards, a lot of young kids would come up and their parents would say, my kid really had no idea who you guys were, but once they saw the show, they loved it, So it does go from one generation to the next. And in Exile's case, Kiss You All Over was such a huge hit and has been used in movies and TV shows throughout the years. So that sort of kept our fan base, going from generation to generation,
right,
through the years, which is a great thing. So we do have usually 2 or 3 different generations at our concerts, which is a great thing. Right.
That's what I mean. Now do you have little ones coming up and singing I Want to Kiss You All Over to you?
I have a 7-year, he almost be 8-year-old grandson, and he loves that song, and
you need to videotape him. You need to video. I guess you don't want to make him public though, huh? Yeah, well, not really, but there are some videos of him singing along, and oddly enough, he loves the band. Probably because he calls me Papa. Probably because Papa's in the band, but he loves to listen to our music. He also likes, he likes the Beatles and stuff. So, and I think it's because his mom, my daughter, she grew up, liking basically a lot of what I call older music as well. So, right. And it's great because let's face it, the older music is usually better. It is better. Is your grandson musically inclined? He loves to sing and dance along, but he's not. I think he's getting to the stage where he wants to learn to play guitar. So I'm thinking about buying him a guitar. He has a keyboard. I'm a keyboard player, but right. I've never really pushed him to do that because I figure if he really wants to, he'll let me know. So I don't really make a big deal to push him to do it. He's really more into sports. He loves hockey and he's into karate and stuff now. So. But if he's ever really interested, then I'll make sure he gets lessons. I think you could facilitate that for him. I think you can make that happen. I could probably find someone who can give him some lessons. Yeah. This can't possibly be your first CRS, or am I wrong? No, and I don't know. I've kind of lost count. I mean, how many years does CRS go back? I really don't know because they used to do it at the Renaissance. Now they're at the Omni. I remember. Years and years back, and of course, it was a lot smaller. It was a lot smaller. It's big. Yeah. It's big. Yeah, I know we've been doing it ever since it went to the Omni. Many years that's been. It's kind of like what used to be called fanfare. And now it's the CMA Fest. Yeah, I remember. We remember doing fanfare when it was out at the fairgrounds. It was great. They should not, it's like if it wasn't broke, why did you try to fix it? Now it's a hassle. Yeah, it is. Again, I guess I'm sounding sort of old, but I enjoyed it when it was that small, and I also enjoyed like the CMAs and all that sort of stuff when they were much smaller and held out at Opryland, and right. It was just kind of more camaraderie. You got to hang out with all your fellow entertainers, and now it's just kind of a huge concert, which there's nothing wrong with that, and I enjoy watching it, but it's just a whole different deal, so. But anyway, to get back to your question, we've been doing CRS for many years, in a long time. I was at fanfare. For your
yeah.
people or to be waiting for you?
Yeah, I think so. And again, I'm just not particularly interested in working till 2 or 3 in the morning. You know, my my bedtime's usually around 10 o'clock. So anything past that, I'm not interested in anymore.
Well, and even in the show. So are you guys doing, are you traveling by bus? Or are you doing fly-ins?
We do, I'd say 90% bus dates. I think personally, I prefer it because as you well know, even if you fly, you sometimes spend as much time, going to the airport early, sitting around the airport, making connections, waiting around. So really, unless we're traveling, all the way across the country, we generally try to book 2 or 3 dates so that we can do them as bus dates. So
Right.
we'll do maybe half a dozen fly dates a year, but everything else is on a bus. And we have a couple of specific buses that are we lease, but they're sort of our buses. So you kind of get used to a particular bus. And honestly, I don't think any of us really love being on a bus for hours at a time. After doing it for decades. I mean, believe it or not, this is the 59th year that the band has been together. Next year we'll be celebrating 60 years.
Wow.
So that's a lot of bus travel.
That's a lot of dirty socks.
Oh, it is. So I'll say this: we all love being on stage, getting to the venue, and being on stage and playing. But the travel, it's not as much fun as it used to be. And we try to basically go out, 2 or 3 days on weekends. We don't like to be gone, weeks at a time or anything. It's just, for one thing, we don't like being away from our families and all that sort of stuff. So, but anyway, it's mainly by bus that we travel anymore.
Yeah. So mostly Friday, Saturday, some Thursday, Friday, Saturday, some Saturday, Sundays, like the way, yeah, I know.
Exactly. I know. Yeah. I'd say normally a 3-day weekend and of course kind of a half a day on each end. So we're usually home, most of the week, and so that it works out well. You can deal with that pretty well.
Right. What bunk are you in? Are you in a lower or an upper?
I have a middle bunk.
You're a middle bunk. How many bunks are on your bus? What do you have 6?
We have 12. We have
12.
Yeah, because we have 5 band members, 3 crew members, at least 1 driver. Sometimes
2.
depending on sometimes 2. So. There's plenty of room, but that's one thing I learned. You need to be able to pick the right bunk.
Yes, you do.
And we all do have specific bunks that we like. I'm a fairly tall guy, so the middle bunk is just easier to get in and out of. I'm too old to climb onto a top bunk, and
the bottom one, forget.
And the bottom one you have to kind of crawl down into. So the middle bunk works quite well.
Another thing people don't realize is that bus drivers are only allowed to drive for 8 hours.
Yeah, things have changed a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, frankly, in the old days, drivers they might drive 15, 20 hours, but and didn't really think too much about it. But yeah, because of the DOT regulations, buses and stuff are regulated pretty strenuously anymore, and that's probably a good thing. It's because to me, really, the most important person on tour is probably the bus driver. Because
they get you there. They get you there safely,
and yep. We're very lucky in that we have a couple of really good drivers that we use exclusively over the last few years, and it's important because with these drivers, when I get on a bus, I don't worry about getting in the bunk and going to sleep. I don't worry about
your safety.
A driver. Yeah, they say your safety, and that's very important because there's no worse feeling than having a driver that you don't think drives well, and you're always worried about him, running off the road or having a wreck. So, yeah, the driver is a very, very important part of our touring lives for sure.
I would say so. How many days are you guys going to be at CRS?
Just one day.
Okay.
Well, for one thing, we actually had a last minute. I think we were going to do a couple of days, but we actually had a gig reschedule, which interfered with one day, and then one of our guys was planning on flying out to the West Coast or something. So just one day, and that's generally it. We generally just go, one day, and and just make the rounds of, people like you who
and the DJs and the program directors and rubbing
exactly.
elbows.
Yeah, and let's face it, a lot of the other younger mainstream stations, they're frankly not interested in us anyway. Like top 40 country stations. So that's kind of irrelevant to what we do anymore. So we just try to kind of.
You and I could talk about that for another hour.
We could, and
yes.
I will say this: at this stage in our career, it's kind of nice to not have to worry about necessarily having a radio hit.
Mm-hmm.
Because that was always the big stressful thing back in the 80s and 90s. You had to worry about, are we going to have another top 10 or a number one? And you had to sort of do that when you recorded. And now when we do a project, we always want to do what appeals to a fan, but we can kind of do whatever we want now.
Right.
And not necessarily worry about, is this going to fit in top 40 radio these days, because frankly, nothing we do is going to fit in top 40 radio. So even though I will say this, I think in particular in the last year or so, there are some good songs on modern country radio.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of crap too, to be honest about it.
Yeah.
But there's some good young songwriters and some good young artists that I like. But generally, I'll have to admit, I don't generally listen to top 40 radio much. It's just, it doesn't interest me. I'm interested more in classic country or classic rock, really.
Have you heard Luke Combs, If I Wasn't Doing This?
I have. Luke Combs is one of the artists I like. That guy is for real. I like him. Now I've gone blank. Well, there's a number of artists like him that, again, to me,
there isn't. That's why he stands out, because there's a lot of cookie cutters, that's the crap.
That's exactly it. And of course, one of my main gripes is a lot of songs basically sound alike. A lot of young country singers sound alike. It's not like the old days when you hear George Strait or George Jones or Merle. I'll hear or Waylon. I may hear a record that I like, but I don't know who's doing it.
Right.
And Luke Combs, and there are some other young artists like
Chris Stapleton. Chris Stapleton.
Of course, I talk about a distinctive voice.
Yes.
I'm getting something off my phone here. Again, another Kentucky guy. Chris is from. But Chris is for sure, and Luke Combs, and again, there are some artists who are for real, and country music's never going to completely go away.
Right.
I think Vince said something like this. Every music changes, so we shouldn't necessarily judge, the way country is now, because, and also when I complain about something on the radio, I think back to what my parents would say, when the Beatles first came out, and I was listening to the Beatles and the Stones and stuff, the older generation thought that stuff was just terrible, So
and they thought some of it was evil.
Oh, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, and so I try not to judge this generation of music, and as I say, it's not necessarily all my cup of tea, but that doesn't mean it's good or bad. It's just not necessarily for me, and that's just the way it is.
Okay, so do you guys are you recording anything new?
We are actually. Now, to back up just a little bit, we did have a new Christmas CD that was out last year.
Joyful Noise.
Which we, which was all original stuff. And we actually spent last year recording that. And we signed with a new record company this year. And we are going, actually, the guys are actually starting to write songs now. I'm hopefully by the end of the year, we'll have a brand new recorded project out, which we'll record throughout the year. We already have a couple of things in mind that are ready to record. So I would say hopefully by fall, we will have a new project out. And I have no idea what it's going to be called. We don't even know what songs are on it yet. But we will keep recording, and that's another thing. I think that keeps us interested in our careers, is to keep trying to keep doing new music. We don't want to be a band that just goes out and does old hits and kind of keeps recycling the same stuff. We want to keep doing new stuff and maybe kind of rearrange some of our hits, just not only to keep it interesting for the crowd, but to keep it interesting for us too. Because we always said if we got to the point where we just went on stage and went through the motions, which frankly some older bands do, we would probably just hang it up and retire, because that's kind of sad if a band, I think, gets to that point. And I don't think we have. And you're talking about Little River Band. I think they've kept their whole sound very current and have a great stage show. We tour a lot with Alabama. The same with them. I mean, they keep things current, and they have actually one of the best bands on tour right now. We love working with them. So you just have to keep it interesting for yourself as well as the audience.
Yeah, keep it fresh, People can find your music at all of the regular, the iTunes, the stream you at Spotify.
Right.
Your website is, what is your website? Is it just?
It is exile.biz, B-I-Z.
Oh.
And then we also have let me do a shameless plug. You can go to our online store there and buy all our merchandise and stuff. And then we also have a Facebook page, which we actually try to keep something posted every day or so on Facebook. That's really a kind of a better way to keep up with what we're doing. And that page is called Exile Band Official. Okay. And there are a couple other Facebook pages that are similar, but that's the official page. And we keep you informed with new dates, and as I say, we've got quite a tour being put together, and I think in another 2 or 3 weeks we'll probably start listing all our tour dates. Frankly, we don't have anything much in February and not a whole lot in March, but starting in April we start getting real busy. So you can go to our sites and keep up with where we're going to be, basically.
Right. I'm going to stop the recording, but I want you to stay on with me for a minute. But I want to thank you for coming on, and you're so interesting. And like I said, I could talk to you for hours, but we don't have hours. So thank you again. And I look forward to hearing your new stuff.
Thanks, Don. It's been a real pleasure. We sort of got off on some weird tangents here and there, but who cares? It's fun. It's enjoyable.
Yes, it is.